Welcome to the FanDuel Punch Out. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Nick Tasso at the Inefficient 2. Taking a look at the Sunday FanDuel main slate here, and you got 11 games and some decent pitching to pay up for, but nothing that's really going to leave you cash strapped. Overall, I mean, pretty interesting slate.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very balanced. You can make rosters pretty easily on today's slate with pitching not too expensive, and you got some low-priced hitters.
Yeah, definitely. And diving right into pitching, you have Jacob deGrom facing Atlanta, kind of one of the more obvious cash game options for me. And you look at deGrom, and his strikeout rate's been up this month, sitting at 36%. Obviously, it's unsustainable, but compared to April and May, he kind of looks back like his old self.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think DeGrom on FanDuel is the number one cash option. Over his last three starts, 29 strikeouts, and out of all of his starts this year, he's only allowed more than 3 runs once. And there's been a lot of games where he's only given up 2, 1, or none. So I think he's in a prime spot here against this Braves offense, who really don't do much, even though they have won the last 2 games against the Mets. So I think the Mets bats will come out swinging. They don't want to get swept by their division rival, who's pretty bad.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, on the other side of that game, Julio Teheran's kind of an interesting GPP option, just because he has pitched really well. Comes at a little bit of a discount, and this Mets lineup, I mean, pretty banged up. Hasn't been great. I could see him kind of racking up some strikeouts, but obviously kind of a high risk, high reward type play still.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a little bit better at home. I know early in the season his road numbers were really bad, but he's kind of even that out. So I don't think he's too bad of a play today. It's just might be not a great scenario to get the win against DeGrom.
Yeah, that's the only issue, and I think you're kind of looking at that. I mean, you're gonna kind of have to hope maybe they knock him around a little bit, but that doesn't really seem likely today.
No, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I know the Mets haven't really put together much on the offense lately, but I think that should definitely turn around today.
Yeah, definitely. And one guy I'm kind of looking at for GPPs is David Price. I mean, he's intriguing offense just because Seattle kind of carries a high name right now. Obviously, you have some bats on that right side that do some damage against southpaws, but you look at Price. I mean, 27% strikeout rate this year. His ERA in June 2.74 over 3 starts, averaging a strikeout per inning. I think there is a little bit more strikeout upside here with Price than in comparison to deGrom, but it's definitely a less safe option.
Absolutely. You really don't know what price you're going to get. His last 3 starts have been extremely good, but the first few to start the year were kind of iffy and made a lot of Red Sox fans doubt if he was really worth it. But he's looked like his old self lately. He's still given up a decent amount of runs, I think 3 and 2 the last few starts, but he still has that strikeout upside. And you look at this Mariners team, and I know they're pretty high up there against lefties overall, but I really think that they just kind of crush mediocre lefties. And I think when they face someone like Price, I think their bats are gonna go quiet. I do think Fenway Park might help them out a little bit, and they might be able to get some runs going. But I agree with you here. I really like Price.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there is a reasonably low floor, but I think, upside wise and kind of being at the same price as deGrom, he's kind of an interesting swerve.
Yeah, and you'll probably get low ownership just because you look at it a couple days ago when the Mariners, Franklin Gutierrez scored a lot of home runs, and they scored a lot of runs against the lefties. So I just think that people are going to shy away from David Price.
Yeah, definitely. What are your thoughts on Carlos Carrasco today? I mean, decent matchup. I like that price tag for him. Look at him. I mean, he's coming off a start where he allowed 10 hits, but he did strike out 8 against a pretty good Royals team. I'm looking at this matchup for the White Sox, and he's a decent favorite. They're in 24th in WOBA against righties. He's kind of intriguing for even a low-end cash game option, but I think, even with deGrom 1,000 more, it's going to be easier to pay up, but I don't mind him.
Yeah, I mean, if the prices were a little bit different, I would kind of go for Carrasco, but it's really only $1,000 difference. If you need that to fill in a hitter somewhere, then by all means drop down to Carrasco because he is in a really good spot here. You look at the White Sox, and they can't really put much together lately on the offensive side, and a lot of their better hitters are righties, so he kind of neutralizes them. But just 1,000 price differences, it just, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense when you could just go with DeGrom.
Yeah, that's been kind of my thinking too this morning. Um, Anyone cheaper? I mean, that you're really looking at?
I actually kind of like Gio in this matchup. I know the Padres, they're top 5 in strikeout percentage against lefties, and Gio's been striking out at a higher rate than normal, 9, 10, and 8 Ks over his last 3. The only thing is that the Padres, for some reason, have a pretty high WOBA. I think it's ranked 6th against lefties, so that does kind of scare me off. But I don't know. Gio's been up and down, so I think he's a pretty good GPP play, but I'm not sure if I could trust him in cash.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some strikeout upside there, but I'm kind of with you. I mean, guys like Will Myers, in a real hot streak. I mean, a couple of those other guys too have hit lefties pretty well, and he's one of those guys that's just you don't know which guy's going to actually show up when he's on the hill. But overall, I mean, that strikeout upside is there.
Yeah, and you look from earlier in the season, he wasn't striking too many guys out, but he also wasn't allowing too many hits, and it's kind of reversed now. Now he's kind of given up a little more, but he's still evening out with the strikeouts.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at catcher here, and for me, I mean, Victor Martinez at 2,900 against Chris Young's kind of the top play of the day for me. You just look at Young. I mean, a shortened season so far this year, but still giving up a ton of homers to lefties as he has usually throughout his career. And at that price tag of 2,900, I can't get away from it. And it kind of takes out a lot of guys over that price tag.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at Chris Young, he's given up 13 home runs to lefties this year in just 19 innings against them. So that's a crazy number. And Victor Martinez is pretty hot right now, too. But I agree with you there. If I did want to get a little bit different, I'd probably pay up a little bit more for some guy like Wilson Ramos. Pomeranz is kind of fallen back to earth lately, and Ramos is kind of red hot lately. 5 home runs and 53 at bats in June, 452 WOBA. So he's kind of hitting his stride right now. And the only other 2 that I'd be interested in would just need to wait and see about the Arizona Diamondbacks lineup, and Wellington Castillo and Chris Herman could both be in play for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Those are definitely the 2 that I'm keeping an eye on. You probably will see Herman. I mean, just given it's a Sunday game, but both of those guys are on my radar. 2,600, Evan Gattis, an intriguing GPP option. I mean, obviously there's big time upside with him. Getting a lefty against Brandon Finnegan, who's allowed a 1.34 home runs per 9 to righties. Nice park out there in Minute Maid. His prices kind of dropped down a little bit because of his recent struggles, but I don't mind him kind of as a drop down. If you're looking for a little bit more power, looking to be different.
Yeah, that probably is your best bet if you want to drop really low. The only other guy that I had in my notes would be Stephen Vogt. You look at Jared Weaver, and he's allowing over his past few starts basically 2 home runs a game, and he's only had 1 start where he hasn't allowed a home run, and he's just been really bad, allowing a lot of hits, and it's not good for Jared Weaver. And you look at Vogt, he's still hitting 3rd against righties, and he could kind of do some damage. It's a cheap price tag, 2,700, but if you look at some other guys, like you said, Gaddis, he might not be too bad. He's a little bit cheaper up against the lefty.
Yeah, definitely. And today's one of those days where, I mean, you kind of wait until lineups too if you really want to punt catcher and kind of maybe get some other huge bats in your lineup. You kind of see maybe someone is hitting 5th or 6th in the lineup and in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Sunday's always the day to wait for lineups for catchers because you never know what could happen. People taking the day off, guys hitting just that random spots that they typically would never on a regular night game.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to first base here, and looking up top, I mean, I know Chris Tillman's been pretty good this season. It's going to be hard for me to get away from Edwin Encarnacion in this matchup. I mean, Camden Yard's friendly for right-handers. You look at Tillman, I mean, he's a guy in the past who's been a reverse splits type guy. He has allowed a ton of homers. I'm not quite sure he's the guy who can even slow down his Toronto offense that's really starting to come around now.
Yeah, I agree with you there. You look at Encarnacion, and he has, 5 home runs in the past week or so. He had 3 straight home run games, had a double dong game, and he's just been phenomenal getting hits. in one of those tears right now that you kind of don't want to miss. But at the same time, I also like the other two guys right up there, Goldschmidt and Ortiz, just kind of attacking the Philly starters at Eflin, or is it
Yeah.
Elfin? I kept messing that up. The L's and the F look the same to me. But I definitely like Goldschmidt. He does have home runs back-to-back games. He's 3 this past week. He's on a 12-game hitting streak. So he's pretty much locked in right now as well. And you look at Ortiz against Taijuan Walker. Walker's been okay this year, but he has had some struggles against lefties. Ortiz has been extremely good, basically almost a 500 WOBA this year at 494. His ISO is over 400, and you look at Walker, and he's still giving up a lot of home runs. That's kind of been his issue this year. And to lefties, he's allowing 2.04 home runs to lefties.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing up there. I mean, at this point, it seems like you really can't even go wrong with all three of those guys. But Goldschmidt's probably my favorite out of the tier. Encarnacion, I mean, probably a close second. But I mean, really, how can you argue against any of those guys right there?
Yeah, and they're all similarly priced, so I don't think anyone is going to kind of kill you. They all are in for a pretty good day, most likely.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of spinning down, Joey Votto's kind of turned things around of late, and I kind of like the Reds as a sneaky contrarian team today. You look at Fires, I mean, he's on a 325 WOBA to left. He's 1.29 home runs per 9. Votto, I mean, after really a rough start, I mean, 373 WOBA this year against righties. So at that price tag, he is a decent drop down option, and I kind of like him as more of a GPP move, if anything.
Yeah, I like that too. One of my favorite plays at first base, if you drop really down, would be Kendrys Morales. He's just really turned it on. He's now on a 7-game hit streak, 9 out of 10 hits in the past 9 out of 10 games. I mean, and he's just been extremely good, 477 WOBA in that span. And you look at Zimmerman, and he's really struggled his last 2 starts after his injury. So I think the Royals, even though they do have a lot of injuries, are still in a prime spot.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, Zimmerman's kind of that one guy he's back down to earth now. I mean, he's a guy who before the season, I mean, moving to the AL, we kind of expect him to struggle a little bit, be a little bit more average, and that kind of has been the case lately.
Absolutely. I mean, he went the first 4 starts, I believe, without giving up a run, or just gave up 1 run, and he was one of the best pitchers, and then he just kind of lost. So you knew it was going to kind of change at one point, going from the National League to the American League, and after that injury that he suffered, he just doesn't look like the same pitcher.
Yeah, I know. And looking lower, I mean, the Indians' bats are kind of intriguing. Mike Napoli against the lefty Rodon there, 2,900. He's kind of a guy who I'm probably only going to work into a lineup with probably 2 other Indians bats, so I'll go a little mini stack if anything. But I think they're kind of worth a notable mention just because Rodon's been, on and off.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you have a guy like Rodon who is susceptible to having kind of a blow-up inning or so, you kind of always have to get some exposure against him.
Yeah, and you look at this Indians team. I mean, they've put some runs on the board of late, and a couple of those guys really hit lefties pretty well, like Rajai Davis and Lindor.
Yeah, and Napoli's one of those guys too.
Yeah. Looking at second base here, and up top, I mean, Jose Altuve, 4K against a lefty is kind of my favorite play. I mean, he struggled last time out. This has kind of been a relatively disappointing series for the Astros offense against Cincinnati, but I'm going to still tread back to that well there and go with Altuve against the southpaw.
Yeah, I agree with you there. You look at Finnegan, and he's really struggled against righties this season. He's had some good games. Heck, he had no-hitter going against the Cubs for a while, but he's really come back down to earth, and he's really not the same pitcher. He's still kind of decent, but I agree with you there. You look at Altuve, and he's such a professional hitter that he really should be locked in here.
Yeah, I mean, 462 WOBA against lefties, 220 ISO. I mean, he's been dialed in for most of the season. He's kind of that safer Houston Astros bat, against a lefty. I also don't mind Pedroia either. I mean, we mentioned Walker, and Walker's a guy who has struggled on the road this season, allowing a 383 WOBA, 344 to righties as well. Pedroia been kind of a reverse splits guy. I mean, before in the past he's hit lefties well, but this year 367 off righties. I wish the price difference was a little more. It's just 400, but I still think he's definitely worth a look.
Yeah, I think he'll get him pretty low ownership rate. He's had three straight 0 for 4 games, grounded into two double plays yesterday. So I think a lot of people are down on Pedroia. But just a week and a half ago, though, he was in the midst of a pretty good long hitting streak. So the bat's still there. It's just he's in a little funk, mini funk, but still a funk nonetheless.
Yeah, and dropping lower, Gene Segura 3,300. I think another Diamondbacks bat that we like, and once again, maybe for the same reasons. Segura has usually hit better at home and has also hit better against right-handers. So I'm looking at him. I mean, the slump seems to be pretty much over for him, and at 3,300, I'm going to take advantage of that price tag because you look before. I mean, he was a guy who was near 4K.
Yeah, but you look at Segura and you said how he hits better at home, which is true. But Citizens Bank Park isn't that bad of a spot for hitters. So I definitely agree with you there. I like him in this matchup. And then the only other guy that I really like, he's kind of in the same range, would be Whit Merrifield leading off for the Royals. He's just been really phenomenal lately. He's doing a little bit of everything, and I think he's one of those players who can basically guarantee you he won't get you 0 fantasy points.
Yeah, he's been stellar. I mean, 3,400 is a really nice price tag, and I'm definitely not afraid of Zimmerman. I know you aren't either. I mean, with Morales and Merrifield there, and they all come at some really nice price tags as well.
Yeah, because I think the algorithm still thinks Zimmerman is a good pitcher, so everyone's kind of cheaper now.
Mm-hmm. Looking lower, I mean, what are your thoughts on the Texas bats as far as the lefties? A guy like Adore or Profar if they're in the lineup.
Yeah, I like Odor, but for me with him is he's kind of in the same price range as all the other guys that I like. So I'd probably drop down to Merrifield, only $100 less. Profar though, I still kind of like him. You look at Mike Leake, and he hasn't been the best. He's efficient, but he still allows a lot of hits, a lot of home runs, which I don't really foresee Profar hitting a home run, but he could definitely collect a few hits here and there. So I don't mind him at his price.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. I like some of these. I like that game. I think it's kind of a sneaky one because you look at really two pitchers that are quite average. I mean, you look at Leake and a guy who pitches the contact and kind of relies on that. Logan Forsythe at 2,800 against Jake Peavy. I'm not quite sure how many Rays are being talked about for today, but I think they are worth a mention. I mean, Peavy's been bad for most of the year. I mean, he's had a couple of good starts here of late, but overall, Forsythe, I mean, at that price tag 2,800, you kind of can look at those top 5 bats and plug them in wherever you want if you need some value.
I agree with you there. You look at Forsythe, and last year he was always hitting lefties, but even this year, I know he was hurt for a little bit. It seemed like he's hit righties pretty well. Not as good as lefties, obviously, but he's kind of still one of those guys who can still do some damage against righties, and I don't mind him, especially at that price. It's pretty low.
Yeah, definitely, and that's kind of where I draw the line. I mean, I don't really see a need to truly punt today. Because, I mean, you look at second base, there's not really a lot of guys down lower that I like.
Yeah, I like staying in that mid-range 35, 3,000 kind of range today.
Yeah, me too. Moving over to the third base here, and up top, I mean, Josh Johnson's 4,900. Much like Encarnacion, he's been red hot. For him at that price tag, it's a little tougher for me to squeeze him in. I don't mind him in cash games if you're going that route, but also I think you can kind of go a little bit more balanced because there are some decent guys here in this position.
Yeah, I agree. He's $1,000 more than the next highest, being Arenado. So I think Donaldson's kind of a fade for me today, despite his current tear he's on.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Arenado. I mean, he's a guy I don't mind away from Coors. I think he's one of the few Rocky bets that I don't mind getting away. And you're always going to catch him at kind of a low ownership, and it's not a bad matchup against Tom Kohler. At that price game, I think I can lean on him just because I trust him a little bit more than Beltre or Prado, or I don't mind Jake Lamb either, but I kind of like Arenado on that tier.
Yeah, I agree with you there on Arenado. You look at Kohler, he has been better his last 2 starts, going 6 innings in each. He struck out a decent amount, but he's still a guy who can give up hits. And you look at Arenado, and basically the only guys I can play from the Rockies would be him and Carlos Gonzalez when they're away from cores. So I definitely like him here. The ballpark isn't that great, conducive to home runs, but getting a couple hits here or there could really do some wonders. He could probably get two doubles or so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we know him. I mean, he's one of the elite hitters in the game, and you're looking at the matchup against Kohler. It's still something that jumps out at me on the slate.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do you like a little bit further down? I know you said you liked Lamb, 3,600. Anyone else further down?
Uh, yeah, I like Johnny Peralta at 2,700. I like a couple of these Texas bats against Perez there, just because he's pretty average. He doesn't allow a ton of homers. He's kind of a ground ball pitcher, but he is still prone to giving up a ton of hits. At that price tag, I think it's worth it. I mean, Peralta's always had a steady career rate against lefties.
Yeah, absolutely. The few guys that I were looking at would be you'll get him for very low ownership in GPPs. Would be Travis Shaw. I know he's been awful for the Red Sox lately, but he has put together a little mini hit streak right now, and he is at Fenway where he hits really well there. Uh, he's batting eighth or seventh now. So you're not going to expect too much from him, but he's only 3,000. And then right below him, too, would be Todd Frazier. He still has that potential basically anytime he's up at bat to hit a home run, do some damage. I know he hasn't been the best lately, but 2,900 for Todd Frazier, it's kind of hard to pass up if you're trying to save money at third base.
Yeah, definitely. And I like those two names. I think you're going to get them at pretty low ownership on Tasty. And it's not going to kill you either. So if they do have a kind of a quiet 1 for 4 game at those price tags, it's not, a lineup killer. Like if Donaldson did that or something.
Yeah, and the only other guy would be Jeffrey Marte going up against the lefty Surkamp, who's been really bad this year, lefty-righty matchup. So I definitely like Marte. He has some potential here. He's only 2,400, so it's going to save you a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that may be something to look for. I mean, punt players wise, as we mentioned earlier with catcher, there are some guys that move up in the order, guys can take some rest, and that could, certainly move up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Just got to check to make sure he's in the lineup. He should be in the lineup, but I never know what Mike Scioscia's doing. I never know why he still has a job, but that's besides the point.
He's been around a long, long time.
Yeah, I remember growing up 2001 or 2002 World Series, and I don't know. They win despite him, and he hasn't done much since.
No, those Troy Gloss years.
Yep, and John Lackey.
Yeah. Looking at shortstop here, and if you haven't noticed, I mean, Manny Machado dropped his appeal. He's going to serve his 4-game suspension, so not an option today. Up top, I really like Carlos Correa at 4,000. I mean, big home run upside here against Finnegan. And between him and Bogarts, I think those are kind of the two easy calls up top.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really like Bogarts. He's just been on a tear. Another home run yesterday. His 99 hits to lead major leagues, one away from 100, and best average in the game. So I think he's a pretty safe option. I know it's a righty-righty matchup, but it doesn't matter. He really is hitting basically any pitcher right now.
Yeah, and definitely. And the pricing's a little weird because, I was looking at guys like Brad Miller's at Cozart as kind of contrarian options, but they're not that priced differently from Bogarts, which is an issue.
Yeah.
I don't mind him if you want to be contrarian because I do like Brad Miller against JPV. I think it's very much in play with his upside. But I was kind of hoping that there would be at least an $800 difference, and there's not.
Yeah, it's crazy. You look at Bogarts 3,700, and then you have the guys who you would think would be at least no more than 3,000. They're all just bunched up next to him. So they're kind of forcing you to make a good decision by playing the better player or just being completely contrarian and going with one of those other guys like Miller, Cozart, Seager.
Yeah, definitely. It's odd. And I think kind of with the price difference, Trevor Story, I might take a shot at him. I mean, at 2,800, he's definitely worth it. There is some upside, but in that range, he doesn't really compare to a lot of those names. So he is one of the better options down that low.
No, absolutely. And you look right at the same price. Trey Tulowitzki started yesterday. Should start again today, coming back from the injury. So he went 0 for 4, but it's still there, hopefully, with Troy Tulowitzki and the way that this Toronto Blue Jays offense is going right now. He'll probably get up with runners on base and potential for RBIs, and you never know, against Tillman could even hit a home run.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not a bad ballpark either. And at that price, I mean, he's kind of the value guy. I still think kind of sitting there in that 2,800 range is about as low as I'm going today.
No, absolutely. It's not like you have to go really high up for him. It's kind of just those, well, if he's at 2,800, I might as well play him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of been the case all year.
Yeah, and I actually don't even mind Kettle Marte if he leads off again against the lefty. I know it's priced, but Marte is kind of a sneaky player. Could get on base a couple times, could steal a base because Vasquez most likely won't start today because he started yesterday. So I actually don't mind him. At 2,800, though, you might as well just go up to Troy Tulowitzki or Story.
Yeah, I think so too. Moving on to outfield here and up top, I'm looking at Mookie Betts. I think the Sox offense, I mean, they've been kind of quiet this series, but I think today's kind of that breakout day. And I like Betts here. I mean, we talked about Walker's struggles on the roads, home run troubles. At 4,400, it's not a bad price tag for him.
Yeah, and you look at Betts and he collected 2 hits yesterday, and he's just kind of the guy who's leading off. And for most of the time, he's going to get a couple hits, 1 or 2, and he's going to do some damage. He'll get a double, potentially get a home run. So I think he's definitely in a prime spot here. Walker has been a little bit better against righties, but I still kind of agree with you. His price tag isn't too egregious that you can kind of play Betts here, especially if you're going to do a little stack with the Red Sox.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's kind of what I'm going for with guys like him and Pedroia. We're kind of Bogarts and Ortiz are kind of more the safer options as far as the one-offs go.
Absolutely. You see Rajay Davis's price is 4,000.
Yeah, not quite the value bet I was hoping for.
No, I know we were talking about him earlier, but at that price, I don't know if I can really justify playing him unless I just have so much salary left over.
Yeah, it's tough when you get guys around him at the, a Jay Bruce or Michael Saunders, guys that have consistently done it all year. And then you got Davis, who only really does it against lefties and still, I mean, has a lower floor than what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if he does lead off, I know he kind of hits all over the order. Against Rodon, he could be in the spot where he just does absolutely nothing. And at that price tag, it's kind of going to hurt you. It's not like he was at 2,500, and if he got a 0, it wouldn't be too bad.
Right. I mean, now it's like if he does that, you're hurting a little bit.
Absolutely.
Spinning down, I mean, I like George Springer, GPP's 3,800. I mean, he's got some power against lefties. Talked about Finnegan. Being a subpar lefty, giving up home runs in Minute Maid, I expect kind of this Houston offense to somewhat break out at one point here, and I'm hoping that's today because it really hasn't been the last 2 games. I like the price tag for him. I think he's at a nice price.
Yeah, 3,800 isn't bad for George Springer up against lefties. Again, it's a really nice park in Houston for basically all their righty hitters. So I think it could go a lot worse than him. So I like him here. Also like Jacoby Ellsbury. I haven't said that a lot this year, but he's really turned it on lately. He's got a mini 6-game hitting streak going on. Irvin Santana really isn't that good of a pitcher. So I think leading off, Ellsbury could get a couple hits here or there. Even steal a base and score a runner. So, and he's kind of one of those guys who just slowly adds up fantasy value.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of at a similar price tag. I mean, Stephen Piscotty now hitting 300 on the year. 3,400 is a really nice price tag for him. I really think it could be higher. You look at him, I mean, 496 wOBA off lefties this year, 259 ISO. Perez, I mean, really your average run-of-the-mill left-hander. And Piscotty at that price, I mean, I think he's definitely playable in all formats.
Yeah, absolutely. I like a lot of the Cardinals bats today against Perez. I know Perez has been a little bit better, but he still struggled against righties. So I like them. Another guy I do like to staying in that Houston game would be Duvall. He's just for the Reds. He's just been extremely good lately. Hit a home run yesterday, and lefties or righties, he's just been hitting all of them.
Yeah, I mean, his power numbers are crazy. I mean, he's got 20 on the year. 17 extra base hits, driving in runs. I'm with you, and I really do think 1 through 5, the Cincinnati offense could be pretty sneaky today.
Yeah, absolutely. My only concern is that we've seen a lot of games where they just kind of go quiet. And it's one of those things that you kind of never know. Going up against Mike Fiers, you hope that's not the case because Fiers has been pretty bad, but you just never know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, that's kind of why I'm just sticking to him more so than just GPPs only.
Absolutely.
3,200 Odubel Herrera is going to be a guy who, once again, I like this matchup. I think the Phillies, not quite talking about him as much as I plan to, and I think Herrera's kind of that standout guy against Bradley, who really hasn't been that great. He hasn't showcased kind of an arm that he could be. And you look at Bradley, I mean, 329, a little bit of lefties. Herrera's been really strong this season.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I think at that price tag, I mean, it's a reasonable outfield choice today.
No, absolutely. You look at Herrera, and he's had his price fluctuate this season, but at 3,200, you kind of can't go wrong with him. He's a very safe cash game play, in my opinion. Just kind of plug him in there, and he's just a guy who leads off, and he can get a couple of hits. Doesn't have much power, but it's still there. And at that bandbox at Citizens Bank, I mean, he should be in line to rack up some fantasy points. And he's a guy who's really turned it on since last year. I know he came on sort of strong last year and then struggled, and this year he's just been taking it to another level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're kind of looking at these Phillies bats. I mean, sometimes they can cough. He's been the most consistent this season.
Yeah, so he's leading off, and he just is going to see the most opportunities against Bradley. And like you said, Bradley hasn't really shown too much. There's still a lot of unknown about him right now, so it's kind of a wait and see approach. And I think a lot of people will be off Phillies bats, so you could probably get him at a low ownership.
Yeah, definitely. And looking back, I mean, you got Corey Dickerson. I mean, a couple homers in the last week or so, going up against PV, who's been awful against lefties. He's an intriguing GPP option. There's no way I'm going to really trust him in cash. He's just been a guy who's plunked in way too many zeros this season with that low average. But power-wise, I mean, it's still been pretty solid. So tournaments, I think you can kind of look at him for GPP power.
Yeah, he's a prime guy for tournaments. Like you said, he could easily give you zero on your fantasy output, but at the same time, he can still hit that home run. He's even had 1 or 2 games where he's hit 2 home runs. And the thing that's really weird with him, it always seems like his home runs come with nobody on base. So that's the only kind of thing that stinks. And then even when he does have people on base, he really doesn't do much knocking them in. Yeah, he looked really good, I guess, at the beginning of the year, but this last month or so, he's really trailed off. But like you said, the power's still there, and I just wish he was still at Coors Field, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, I mean, talking about going to the Trop, I mean, it's disappointing, but still, I mean, definitely more homers than I expected out of him so far to start this season.
Yeah, he really has surprised with the home runs, but you just wish the average was a little bit better. The only guy else I wanted to touch on would be Cameron Maybin hitting second, 2,700. He's kind of similar to me as Herrera, where he's priced low enough where he only needs a few hits to really do some damage, and he's kind of in a prime spot here against Chris Young.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I will never, tell anyone to not play anyone against Chris Young. He's just that bad.
Yeah,
maybe at that price tag's nice.
Absolutely. The last 3 years, he's just been atrocious. I know he was good about 10 years ago when he was pitching for Seattle, but now he's just kind of a shell of himself. And the only good thing for the Royals is that they let him sometimes only go 4 innings, and then they have a good bullpen to kind of shut everyone down.
Yeah, that's the only thing you got to worry about. But I mean, I look at that. I mean, Volquez pitched into the 6th yesterday, so I mean, they had to use up a little bit of their bullpen the prior 2 games.
Yeah, so you're hoping that Young can at least go 5 or so, but unfortunately, that's the only bad thing if you stack Detroit Tigers and he only goes 3 or 4. It's good, it means that they're hitting him hard, but then the rest of the Royals bullpen could kind of shut you down.
Yeah, that's always a big problem there. If I'm looking to kind of punt in the outfield and get a value guy in there, Michael Bourne at 2,400, kind of just to wrap up that Arizona team there. Hits up in the top of the order. You got to always check with these outfielders if they're in the lineup for Arizona because they do shuffle them around quite a bit. But I expect Bourne to be in there, his usual second, and really come away with a nice value because I'm looking at that Arizona total and it's pretty high.
Yeah, absolutely. Eflin's probably the guy that I want to target most against most today. So you kind of have to just wait and see for the lineup and then go from there.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else you want to touch on the outfield here?
I mean, the only other guy really would be Angel Pagan. He's not really that great, and I just think that no one's really talking about the San Francisco bats, and I think they could do some damage today against Odorizzi. So you never know with him. He's pretty cheap, only 2,300. So you could kind of plug him in a few GPPs. He could probably get some hits or so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's had a couple multi-hit games over the last 2 weeks, so definitely some cheap exposure. Most of those Giants bats are at this point.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why. I just feel like no one's really talking about this matchup with the Giants against them. I know it's a bad park for hitters, but I still don't think Odorizzi is that good.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And guys like him, Matt Duffy, who are at that cheaper price tags, kind of intrigue me.
Absolutely.
So that's going to wrap things up here with the FanDuel Punch Out. Be sure to check out DailyFantasyCafe.com for all our great tools and content.